Live.
Good evening, and welcome to this community engagement on the proposed agreement between Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council and Wildwood Developments, Ballantry Homes. I am Peter Graham, a consultation supervisor with the Lands and Resources Department's Consultation and Accommodation Process team. I'm joined by many of my colleagues on the CAP team, some of who will be speaking this evening. If we can perhaps just go around the horseshoe and introduce yourselves, please.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Jones. I am the manager of the Six Nations Wildlife and Stewardship Office.
Good evening. I'm Lonnie Bobberry, and I'm the Director of Lands Resources Department and a member of the CAP team.
Good evening. I'm Taylor Hell. I'm the Assistant Director at Lands and Resource Department for Six Nations, the Grand River Elected Council.
Good evening, everyone. Don Russell. I am the Consultation Administrative Assistant.
You can see this evening's agenda before you. I'm just going to briefly outline the project in question. Then we'll go to Lauren to talk about the natural environment, Lonnie on some of the historical background and property status. Then we'll discuss the agreement itself, how we see a potential agreement and executing that. And then Taylor will talk about the engagement survey. Before we close, there'll be plenty of time for comments and questions. We'll relay some of the comments and questions to you beforehand that we've previously heard in case some of you have the same questions. So you can see the property itself there in the blue. It is right across the street from the former proposed Mackenzie Meadows subdivision. Because of its location, the developer recognizes that it will be impossible for them to build there without the consent of the Six Nations community. And we're going to be relaying to you some suggestions we have about how a potential agreement can be shaped. So for the basics, the property's 145 acres. 107 of that is the developable. Part of that remainder, Lauren will describe a bit. There's some woodland features that will not be disturbed during the development. So at the moment, we're talking about approximately 725 housing units could be built, depending on market conditions and how many freehold units or townhouses there are. That could be as many as 900 units. Currently, the County of Haldimand has a roadway, an external roadway to this development that would be required if the development was going ahead. But we oppose that roadway, and this project wouldn't proceed in any way if that roadway taking up additional land had to be developed. The project itself, like other subdivisions, instead of being built all at once, it would be built in approximately 6 phases over a period of years, basically depending on how strong the demand was to purchase homes would dictate how soon the different phases would be sold and constructed. Archaeology was completed to stage 4 in 2017. Monitors from elected council, HDI, and MCFN all attended. And now Lauren is going to describe the baseline conditions of the natural environment for this property, including mitigation measures. And I'm just going to put up a map that will help you understand the features on the property.
Thank you, Peter. So Peter put his numbers in acres. I opted for hectares. So the development itself will take place within the agricultural land, which makes up about 90% of the total 58.2 hectares, which is the 145 acres that Peter previously mentioned. Our big thing for this project, which we wanted to protect, was that woodland to the right of the screen. Of the entire woodland, approximately 0.06 hectares of that significant woodland would be potentially removed. This equates to about 13 trees, and that would just be in the very, very tip of the triangle on the right-hand side of your screen there. For our office, I reviewed the natural heritage document as well as the geotech and the Phase 1 ESA. All of these documents provide us with a pretty adequate picture as to what the plan is from an ecological perspective. First things first is the natural heritage document. For this, the surveys took place in 2014. For context, this is quite old by the Wildlife Office's standards. We generally prefer to have studies take place within 3 years. And so in order to circumvent this, we have negotiated that essentially the proponent will just assume that whatever is important to that woodlot, whatever animals are found, whatever plants are found, that we will just mitigate for that potential presence of that animal, that plant being there. So this is equated out to a 10-to-1 tree replacement ratio. For clarity and for reference sake, typically within County of Haldimand, you are lucky if you get a 3-to-1 tree replacement. During surveys, they did find some leopard frogs, green frogs, and American toad. These were all observed in farm pond areas. There was no assessments whatsoever for non-calling amphibians like salamanders. For mammals, there was presence of coyote, raccoon, red fox, skunk, and deer, all observed. Because the development is taking place within an agricultural field, we're typically not viewing an agricultural field as direct habitat. It's hard for an animal to find food. It's hard for an animal to find a place to sleep and to breed and so on and so forth in an agricultural field. So we typically look at these types of spaces as a method to get from one place to another, which is why we are more so focusing on this woodland. For birds, 35 species were recorded. These include an eastern wood pewee, which is a special concern species, and a red-tailed hawk. There was also barn swallows observed in the old farm buildings, which to our knowledge have been removed, also a special concern. No bat assessments took place whatsoever. This is particularly concerning for my office. Since the time of which these studies took place, 7 of the 8 species native to Ontario are now on the species at risk list. And so it's just another reason why we were focused on this woodland. Plant species that I thought community might be interested in that are present and could be impacted include goldenrod, wild strawberries, white oaks, sugar maples, wild garlic, wild ginger, and eastern white pine. There's 226 species observed, and 27% of which were considered to be non-natives or invasives, like buckthorn. The woodland itself is considered to be significant due to its size. However, that is the case because of multiple property owners. If theoretically this project were to go through, then that woodland would then be transferred to the municipality for permanent protection. For aquatic habitat, there is none, basically. All of the light blue that you're seeing on your screen here are all intermittent tributaries. So essentially they just do not hold water the entire time. Essentially it goes from these intermittent tributaries into another tributary and then eventually into Mackenzie Creek. When it does go into the Mackenzie Creek, it is downstream of Six Nations. And so, because of that, this area is considered indirect fish habitat, and so we are mostly just concerned about water quality and quantity. As for the Phase 1 ESA, this is a document that essentially just looks at the history of the land and threats of contamination. It was noted in this document that this area has been used for agricultural purposes since about the 1930s, and there is very little evidence of any contamination possibilities through groundwater or surface water or soil. For a geotechnical investigation, this is again just a document that they use typically to indicate if it is safe to build whatever you're wanting to build. And it was determined that this was again the case. And they will likely use a cut and fill methodology to level the soil if they needed, and would be importing clean engineered fill if needed. And I believe that's all I have.
Thank you, Lauren. Lonnie will now talk about the historical context of these lands.
Yes, the lands consist of basically 3 lots that were surveyed out in the mid-1800s. Lots 1 and 3, and then I think it's lot 31 consisting of what they called river lots at the time. Now, the first 2 lots, 1 and 3, were surveyed in 1949 and 1951, and then the river lots were surveyed later on. I didn't know they were surveyed, but they were never sold. Now, these lands were surveyed out by the surveyors essentially for the purposes of eventual sale to non-natives, which did occur, and when they were patented in 1849, 1851, the first 2 lots, and the last one, those were before Confederation, before 1867. The last one was the river lots were patented in 1893, after Confederation, after the British North America Act was passed. But in any event, they were surveyed out and they were sold, all except for lot 1, which we not quite the full purchase price was made. Probably about 3/4 of it, as I understand. The rest of it was fully paid for. So they became into the at that time the land registry system of the Upper Canadian government, Upper Canada government, and later came under the jurisdiction of Ontario after 1867 and the British North America Act. So they were more or less alienated some time ago, and I can add that they were part of Oneida Township. All 3 lots are in Oneida Township, as we generally know. And there is no official surrender for Oneida Township. It was generally Six Nations were people moved to where we presently are now, and the governments of the day said our lands would be sold, and we would benefit from those sales, which didn't quite happen the way they said. And nevertheless, they were patented. They are patented, all patented lands, which means they went out of our official control in 1849 and 1851 and in 1893, when they were when settlers or non-natives were bought the land or portions of those lands. So that's a bit of the history behind it. It is part of our court case as far as the lands go, that they never were properly surrendered, and there's damages have to be paid as a result of that. So it's like many millions of acres within Halban Tract that are part of the lawsuit. So This is just one little example of what occurred back in that time period. But they are now, I suppose you could say, legally within the provincial land system and have been for many years, at least over almost 150 years or so. Uh, uh, but nevertheless, even that's the case. We had a proposal with Ballantry Homes to benefit from their development, and that can be explained to you by Peter later on. So that's a bit of the history of the lands, that background to how it came out of our Six Nations possession.
Thank you, Lonnie. I'll now turn to the proposed agreement itself. Before I outline, the points noted below, I do want to emphasize, at this stage, there's not, a formal term sheet or contract. What we're really interested here is knowing whether there is interest or agreement in any kind of agreement for these lands, and your reaction to the general principles that the developer has agreed to that we're outlining here. The next slide will get to our proposal of what we believe would be a good use of the funds. So right off the top, as you see, Six Nations, the Grand River Elected Council, would receive half the profits from the proposed development. In current market conditions, it is estimated that 50% would be around $50 million. If the market was weaker, probably closer to 40. If the market was stronger, you'd be looking at something closer to $60 million. In addition, 53 acres will be purchased, which could be later added to the reserve. The reason why 53 acres is being used is the site itself, that the developable site, as mentioned, is 107 acres. And this developer had previously provided 54 acres of land for a project which never went ahead. So the thinking was adding the 53 to the 54 would ensure that equivalent amount of land the houses would be built on would go to the benefit the Six Nations community. A key thing we believe is that 100% of the share of the profits should be directed to community housing needs. We've done a lot of community engagements over the years, and one of the most popular reoccurring comments we hear is, what about housing here at Six Nations? So that is why we're proposing that 100% of the funds would be directed to housing. Now, if that was a direction the community was supportive of, we've outlined some potential housing options. So the first batch is short-term housing, which could be done relatively quickly. One of the easier projects, as noted, is those units at Turtle Court. 20 units there. So you get a sense of the prices involved for that particular project. It's estimated it would cost $24 million. There's also a bit of a backlog as far as renovating and keeping in good order existing housing stock. If there was some interest, some of this money allocated to housing could go towards those repairs. For medium to long term, it would be plausible to develop that Herald Road site mentioned. And in Harold Road, there'd also be some infrastructure required, around $1 million, aside from the costs of the housing itself. Whereas the Peener Road, there's already some plans in place for a substantial subdivision there, 200 to 300 units. But it would likely cost hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure to develop that. So that looks like, that will not be feasible under this process, at least. There could certainly be other options out for if anyone knows of community groups working on other housing projects. Please let us know. Those examples mentioned were via elected council's housing department. And we'd be really curious if anyone knows of any nonprofit projects or aspirations for projects. It would be helpful. There's also the option of off-reserve housing. It's possible that if the community wished, there could be arrangements for discounts on housing off reserve in that South Caledonia subdivision. It would also be possible for the housing department to acquire units itself. But from past community engagements, there does seem to be a strong preference for on-reserve housing. But please let us know your thoughts on that. I'm just showing you, that's the Turtle Court building, the one where for $20 million, that could be built within the next 2-3 years. And this is one idea we had with the consultation and accommodation process team. As far as who would make a lot of these decisions? Where does this money go? How can the community be sure that 100% of the monies is going to housing? So one thing we've considered is a community working group, which would make suggestions, recommendations to elected council. We believe most of working group members could be volunteers, and honorariums, though, can also be provided. We were thinking of a working group of around 10 members. It's been suggested at least 2 youth and 1 elder sit on it. So please let us know both, do you like the concept? Does it make sense? Will it do what we think it may do? And if you are interested in serving on a community working group, should one ever be developed, if sufficient interest was expressed in working on a proposal with the developer, then please provide us with your contact information on the survey, which we will get to now.
So the survey is available online currently. And there also should be, if not already there, a fillable one where you can fill it online. But if the paper one's just there, you can also fill that one out and either email it or drop it off. There's some targeted questions to answer, and then there is also a space if you have just other comments or questions you want to put there. If you do want a response to your questions, please leave some contact information. Otherwise, we aren't able to provide you with those responses. So yes, please fill it out, and we look forward to receiving more of the surveys.
Great, and I understand, Taylor, that if people dropped off the survey at the Lands and Resources office, they could then get a gift certificate for their efforts.
Yes, there's gift cards available until they run out.
All right, so we're now going to move on to questions and comments. As noted, I'm first going to relay some of the questions that we earlier received in case you find the answers helpful. What does short-term, medium-term housing mean? We were using that as a general description. Short-term is something that could be built within around 2 years. Medium term, around 5, long term, 10 years or more. What is the average land price? We do not have a definitive answer for that question. We understand it can be around maybe 1.1 million an acre. But that's partly impressionistic, just looking at different sales numbers, and shouldn't be treated as a definitive response there. Will the housing with the subdivision be purchased or rented? That would depend if community members expressed interest in either individuals having discounts at the subdivision or the housing department having some units of their to rent out. So it would vary. Is there housing for low income? No, not for the general public that would potentially be buying these homes. That would be sold at market prices. But any units obtained by elected council's housing department would be offered at affordable rates, whether renting or purchasing. Is this housing for natives only or just members of Six Nations of the Grand River? No, just like any subdivision you might see driving around, anyone with the money is able to purchase a home to live there. Does the reserve pay taxes? Taxes are owed on property, not added to the reserve. Taxes are also for services in education. If the option of units in the development, would there be taxes paid? Yes, depends on whether you're renting, where it would be indirect, or purchasing, in which case the taxes would be direct. What about the risks? Real estate is a risky business. Indeed, it is. Any risks would be wholly on Ballantry homes. Six Nations elected council would not be putting up any money and would not be taking on any liability. Can the archaeology reports be reviewed? Yes, if you come into the Lands and Resources Department, ideally give us a brief heads up so we know the reports will be readily available when you arrive. Is Ballantry Homes getting government subsidies? No, it is not. Why is the land price coming out of the profit? Oh, I'm really glad I went over these questions because there is something I forgot to mention when I was talking about the contours of the agreement. So as mentioned, the profit itself is 50-50 from the development. But currently, the developer would receive all profits for the increase for the value of the land. And as many of you will know, once land changes from a designation like agriculture to residential, the land value does increase substantially. In negotiating with the developers, they were very adamant that that they would wholly profit from the land itself. So again, and that's something we would like to hear from you. If you would consider supporting some kind of an agreement, are there certain conditions, i.e., I will support if this, and this happens, otherwise I will not. We have had discussions with the developers, just to make sure any resulting agreement would ensure that areas like sales and marketing fees, management fees, they're called fees, but they're also opportunities sometimes for different profit centers. Any agreement that would be potentially signed with Ballantry Homes would ensure that there's no other profit taking along the way, and that all, as in 100%, of the profits from the developments would be split 50-50. What is engineered soil? Was a question. It's engineered soil is a mix of different aggregates, gravel, combined with different soils, often used in urban areas. The trees, for example, that are planted right, within sidewalks. They had it's very difficult for them to go. So that kind of engineered soil is to help increase stability and increase the chances of a tree thriving. The decision is already made, and I want to emphasize on that. That is absolutely not the case. Both the agreement and where it's going to be spent. As mentioned, the consultation and accommodation process team does feel strongly that 100% of the monies should go to housing. But as with many other aspects, that is open. If members were interested in supporting only if it would go to something else, be it roads, education, etc., that could be changed. It's whatever the will is of the community in that regard. At the end of the day, without strong community support, there will not be an agreement of any kind. Question, who is benefiting? And, it had been brought up, a couple times that, well, maybe they'll just be, if such an agreement were to happen, maybe there'd be around 80 units of housing. That's certainly not going to help everyone. And that is true. It won't help everyone, but again, we've consistently heard that housing was right at the top of priorities. And I think it's important to think, so yes, using, let's say, 80 units of housing as an example, 50 units of housing as an example, yeah, that might provide space for, say, 200, 250 individuals, but at the same time, depending on how housing could be allocated, it does help more. For example, if 50 units were built by the housing department, not only would those people directly inhabiting them benefit, but it would also advance people, 50 slots up the waiting list. So, housing in some ways would happen quicker for about, in some ways, for twice the number of units that would actually be built. And in that regard, it is important to note that at least if housing department was involved, uh, we'd be looking strictly at, affordable rental rates there. Let's see. There's what is a third party? I think that's probably in relation to a statement by Lonnie. So just in that case, it's the third party is someone that comes after. It's not the original owner of the land. It's not the individual who might have first taken the land. It refers to, not only the third buyer in that string, but, what might be the 12th or the 20th buyer if we're looking today. So we still refer to that as a third party. One question is, who would be on the community group? Again, it would be open to any Six Nations of the Grand River member who was willing to serve on it, regardless of political or religious affiliation. The last question I have is, what about employment opportunities? Ballantry is willing to hire Six Nation businesses to complete the work. And pretty much every agreement we have has an employment clause, and we would certainly expect any potential agreement from this to also have one. And Ballantry Homes has already agreed to use Guyana Say for landscaping. So that's the end of the previous questions and answers I'm relaying, and we'll now entirely open the floor to your questions and comments.
Peter, there is a couple. I will answer the first one. It's based on the survey. Is what were the results from the first two? So as mentioned, it is still open, so they have not been tallied yet. But I will say it has been a mix of no, maybe, and yes. Once the engagement period is ended, the results will be shared. I don't know if I was clear, but right now the paper version and like the fillable version is on sixnations.ca under the Lands and Resources Department section of the website. But you can also email the email that was provided, lrcs@sixnations.ca, and to get one handed to you. I also note if it is just a comment and not a question, those will be recorded in the report as written. So I think there's a couple comments about, but I will go to the next question. So Peter, the two times reported that Six Nations business for input on restoration services. Would there be any other opportunities for businesses to engage in outside of the restoration?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'd actually have to have more of a guidance. If there's any examples. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. This would be the opportunity to certainly put in, both general language for procurement and business opportunities, but also outline specifics. So it would be really, really great if we could have, more information, so that could potentially be included. But yes, it's just mentioned Guyana Say because that's the one specific example where there's agreement. But as noted, there was general agreement to have that, and we would like to add more specifics.
Okay, the next question is, what is the community working group? It's a bit of a multi-part question. Is there one currently, and is if it's a community, is it going to exclude band members who are employed by SNGREC?
Yeah, so just to recap, the community group itself, we see, making the key decisions about the housing. There is not one in existence now. Um, the concept we've proposed, would allow any Six Nation member, including those employed by elected council, to sit on it. But as is with many other factors here, we're really curious for your input. At the end of the day, we'd want a kind of community working group that meets the needs and desires of the community, however that may work out.
So the next question is related to the other business employment opportunities, or is who would we contact to get further involved on the previous question? So, as I said, I believe that's related to other businesses being used.
Yeah, and I just flipped back to that email for the survey. Be wonderful if you could, email any requests there, and we'll do everything in our power to help bring that forward. Well, I see that still isn't any new questions, but don't worry, we're gonna stay back a while and wait to see if we get some more.
There, there's another question, and I think it's about the community working group. It says, "Is this considering everyone or only those who attend?"
So at least the idea we were pitching for the community working group is that there'd be potentially a set amount, whether that could be 8, 10, 12, large enough that to have some representation, but also small enough to be able to have good dialogue, establish relationships, etc.
Okay, the next question is, what is the process to ensure a fair 50-50 profit sharing?
Well, we would see that as a vital element to any agreement. Part of it would involve getting a lawyer involved to ensure the legalese is all in the favor of Six Nations. As mentioned, we did previously have concerns that some fees might be used as profit centers, detracting from the 50% of profits that Six Nations receives. So any agreement would have to be ironclad from a legal perspective. Part of that, part and parcel. There's agreement, from the developer that Six Nation representatives will be there for all decisions. There'll be full transparency, but of course we require the legal language to ensure that can be backed up.
Peter, there's a clarification on the question I read out to you before that one, and that was, is this considering everyone or only those who attend? It says that question pertains to the decision-making process of this project.
Yeah, so sorry about so the community working group. We'd hope directly or indirectly would be representative of the community. But as I say, working group, it would be right there, making all the decisions. So we think it would be best to keep it smaller. But certainly, if there's other ideas, whether there might be a steering committee and almost a community hall structure to make all decisions, we're quite open to it.
The next question is, how many homes are projected to be built?
So currently, 725 are projected. Likely, minimum if market conditions were worse, less demand, maybe closer to 700. As noted, if units, tend to be, there's more smaller options, more townhouse options versus freehold, that could be up to 900 units.
The next question, I think, is a build up on how many homes are projected to be built. It is specifically for Six Nations members occupying them, and will some be rent to own?
Yeah, so again, the number that's presently being used is 725, and it would be somewhere around that. Can you repeat the second part?
I think she might be asking if about how much, I guess, if all 50 million was put to buying those units, how many that would kind of roughly be, and then it was also would there be any rent to own? Rent to own.
Oh, I see. I would estimate, I mean, if 50 million was to be put in there, I would estimate around 100 homes could be purchased. As far as whether rent to own, of course, as far as the public's concerned, it's the typical buying. Um, Rent to own, we haven't heard that suggestion before, but from what I know, when it's been used in other places, it has been a really important tool to be able to get to the level of home ownership. So as noted, we're it's very open as far as what will happen with the housing dollars, and we hope to hear more. I think that's a good suggestion, and certainly in any future engagements, we should put that rent to own option as a potential source for the monies.
I guess while we're waiting for the next question, I'll just reiterate. So all comments will be put into the report at the end. They will they'll be written as is. That includes any spelling mistakes, incorrect word uses, and such. Uh, they will not be fixed in any way. Okay, we have the next question. Are these homes going to be only available for band members?
The homes in the subdivision itself, just like any other off-reserve development, will be open to anyone. Of course, housing resulting from the profits estimated at $50 million would be strictly for Six Nation members. Still not seeing any questions, but we'll wait at least a few more minutes to see if there are any others.
I guess I'll just note one more thing. I have heard that there has been some discussion on personal social media pages about this, but as some of those groups are closed or not followed by Six Nations to the Grand River Elected Council. So if you do want your comments or support or no support recorded in the report, please do comment either on this video or one of the posts advertising the engagements, as those can be seen.
Just give a last call for any questions. If you're thinking of one, please get to us in the next couple minutes.
There's the next question is, what would Six Nations responsibility be as part of this agreement?
As far as agreement itself, as noted, developer, is liable and not Six Nations. Should there be any profit? The responsibility, as I understand it, would include just making those decisions. As noted, a lot of factors depend on the market. Six Nations, will have obligation, to sit down, work with the developer to see what may make sense. All right, I'll give one more minute for any potential questions. All right, I see there are no more questions this evening. See we've put back up the contact list. So please, do get in touch if you have any additional ideas, both as far as what an agreement, if any, should have, where potential monies should be used, perhaps suggestions you yourself have, on engagements, because at the end of the day, potential agreement is only possible with your support. Thank you for attending. Have a good night.